David Scullion is Deputy Editor at Brexit Central. Joins me now. David, good morning.
Good morning.
So, speaking to Lord Villamoria, there is nothing good that can come possibly from a Brexit for us as a nation, and indeed from these current negotiations underway. Do you agree with him?
I don't agree with him, no. And when you were talking to him, it was clear that he's still a Remainer, and he doesn't really seem to have accepted what the British people are saying. If you're talking about no deal, we need to say that that no deal is an option for us to get any kind of deal. Otherwise, why would the EU give us any kind of concessions? And if you think about a no deal, what would actually happen with a no deal scenario? Well, it would mean that we'd be able to strike trade agreements with the rest of the world. So Australia said that they want a deal as quickly as possible. The United States said they want a big and exciting deal. And it would mean that we'd stop paying a penny into the EU budget, so we wouldn't have any of this outrageously large Brexit bill to pay 100 billion apparently and paying into all of these ridiculous schemes that the EU wanted. What was it, wildlife bridges and things like that?
Can I just ask you about those? Because I think for those on the outside, we understand. I think that generally people understand that in order to leave this club, if you like, we do have commitments that may or may not go beyond us leaving, and there may be benefits of whether it's staying within certain organisations or commitments that we signed when, for example, I don't know, it might have been a 5 or a 10-year deal to help fund something, whatever. So we understand that there is a bill. What are the things which are in that bill? And can you pick one example of something which you found fascinating and ridiculous, and something that we should understand that it maybe should be paid by us on exit?
Well, I think this is all up to negotiation. I think there is no legal basis for us to pay anything. And just on Wednesday, there was a young man from Whitehall, according to sources, who just totally demolished the idea that we have anything to pay legally. Obviously, David Davis has spoke about some things that we do need to pay, and we do need to be paying things that we have agreed to, certain aspects. But in terms of any kind of transitional deal, any kind of things like that, we need to make sure that what we're paying is proportionate. So, for example, things like the wildlife bridge for animals to cross roads in order to get to their breeding grounds and things like that in Eastern European countries, I just think that's ridiculous. And I think those kind of things are the reasons why people voted to leave in the first place. I think it would be absolutely outrageous if we were still paying for crazy projects like that once we've left.
One of the things that people are concerned about, and has definitely hit them in the pocket immediately, is whilst all this is going on, the euro continues to strengthen as a currency and the pound continues to weaken. So for anybody going on holiday, it has been eye-wateringly expensive to go to any European nation over the course of the summer. And I suppose any of our goods or services that we're buying from Europe, they've become very expensive for us. That does hit us in the pocket, doesn't it?
Well, if you look at the other side of the coin, UK manufacturing sector has been expanding at its fastest rate in 3 years. So the drop in the pound has been good for a lot of Britain, and the economist Ruth Lee has said that it was a welcome devaluation. In terms of employment, we've got record employment in the UK. One thing that Project Fear said that would happen was that thousands and thousands of jobs would be lost, not on the point of us leaving, but on the point of us voting to leave. And what we're seeing now is record employment, the best employment since 1975.
But then you talk about that, but then having said that, there are significant moves, certainly by the international financial organisations, that they seem to be committing, particularly to Frankfurt. Paris, I think, has had a really good, strong go. As soon as anybody goes there, they realise that the rules, the regulations and the infrastructure are just not up to it. But Frankfurt is open for business, and that could very well become the financial centre, if you like, of Europe. And we could lose significant high-paying jobs and opportunities through that stance.
I really reject that. I mean, if you look at the kind of flows...
Well, you can't reject it, it's fact. You can't reject the fact that Morgan Stanley, Goldman Sachs, various other international organisations, of course they'll remain in the UK. I'm not suggesting that they're going to leave entirely, but significant amounts of people, whether it's hundreds or thousands of very highly paid people, will be moved to those places unless we have a financial deal that allows cross-border financial services.
Well, if you look at, you look at some of the reasons why we voted to leave the European Union, it was this kind of meddling rules and regulations and this kind of continental way of doing it. And we saw things like the financial transaction tax, which would have really, really badly affected the City of London and things like that, which we will now be free of. So if the EU want to continue going down the path of regulating and trying to stifle any kind of financial services because they don't really understand it, then that's not really going to benefit Frankfurt. Look, I think it would be great if Frankfurt was a rival to Britain. It's great for competition, but I really don't see the EU going in that way. And they can move to Frankfurt if they like, but they'll be under the EU's punitive regulations and desire to control absolutely every iota of money.
Let me ask you then about some other aspects of maybe what the UK government could be doing, because if you have a look at particularly UK taxation law, it looks as if they're doing everything possible to frustrate business and indeed in financial services and other things from actually remaining here. So, for example, they have changed the rules when it comes to private equity in terms of how private equity people are taxed. Now, you might say that's only for a few thousand people. Those people are now looking at European locations to be based because of changes to domestic tax law that the UK government is making so that they can be seen as fair. Surely, if the UK wants to remain a centre of international finance, then the government needs to get its head round what needs to be done and not change the tax rules to make it punitive for people to do business here.
I would absolutely agree with that. The UK needs to stop doing these kind of punitive tax changes and needs to be looking at an international perspective and saying, yeah, people can leave. And one of the things of Brexit is that we have taken back control. And with aspects like taxation and things like that and regulation, we do need to make ourselves really competitive.
So why does the Chancellor, or why do they seem to be unaware as to the changes they make, the unintended consequence? So, for example, tightening loopholes, as they said, in terms of how international financiers deal with whether it's pay, rewards, long-term incentive plans. They've changed the rules. That has a very negative impact. Same with stamp duty. Same with taxation allowances. Same with non-dom status. All of this stuff, they seem to be oblivious as to what that does to the people who have huge amounts of money and wealth locating in this country. They seem to be doing everything possible to send them elsewhere.
I'm certainly not an apologist for the Chancellor Philip Hammond, and I would just agree with you on that. You know, I can't defend these kind of things that are driving capital away and are driving investment away from the country.
Okay, so in terms of what people are thinking now, and we've had quite a few. Sort of comments from people as we discussed. So Eric has tweeted, how many more times? It is not in the European Commission's interest to give us a good deal. The floodgates are open. In a sense, he's saying, look, the EU is going to do everything possible to give us a bad deal because, well, they kind of don't care, do they?
Well, I think Michel Barnier is living in a fantasy world where he believes Britain's going to be the only loser from a bad deal. And we saw this week the breaking ranks really of the EU. We've had the president of a large French region which has Calais in it who's praised the British proposals for a customs arrangement, and we've got businesses across Germany warning of no Brexit deals. This isn't just going to negatively affect Britain. No deal would negatively affect the EU as well.
And just finally to you, do you think that the change in stance by Labour is going to impact one way or another in terms of our negotiations? Do you think we will end up leaving, and do you think that there will be sort of those Remainers who somehow manage to get their way or side of the argument forward?
Well, I think Labour seem to have picked their metropolitan voters over the rest of their voters who voted to leave. I don't think Labour's change in position, which is, I think, now the 8th change in position on Brexit, is going to have an impact. They're still the opposition. They're not in government at the moment. I'm not sure they're really relevant anymore. They've changed their mind so many times.
Well, I guess we'll have to wait and see. David Scullion, Deputy Editor at Brexit Central. Thank you for joining me here on Talk Radio. And now it really is over to you.